Hello and welcome to a new interview with the Scottish Hockey Heritage as part of our Oral Histories collection. We are joined today by Alan Veitch, a special important person within the Scottish Hockey Heritage organisation. Hey Alan, how are you doing?
Hi, thank you. Thank you for that introduction. You've obviously given me an interesting opening there about being important. So here I am.
Firstly, Alan, can you tell us a bit about who you are, where you're from, your involvement within hockey?
Yeah, I was I'm born and bred in Edinburgh. Went to school at Melville College here in Edinburgh, and that's really where I first got involved in actually playing hockey. I was really quite fortunate. My first hockey coach was one Dennis Hay, who was on the staff there at the time, and also on the staff with a hockey connection was Gilbert Parkhouse, who was an England Test cricketer, but he was also an international hockey umpire for Wales. So that's where it all began, about age 14 or thereabouts.
So, who is your club now? What is your club?
So my father had been involved a lot with Inverleith Hockey Club. He joined there way back in the 1930s, and he continued his involvement after his playing days were over by umpiring for many years. So I do remember going along with him as a wee boy, kicking a ball about inside the pitch while he umpired in Inverleith. Those were the days that clubs just had their own umpires, so it was there. So Inverleith started to obviously get in my veins straight away. So aged about 15 or so, I thought that playing hockey for Inverleith was a good idea, and my dad got me the contacts, and I went along to Inverleith with about 3 other chums to play for Inverleith on Saturday afternoons, having first played rugby on Saturday mornings. So that's how it started in Inverleith. Rugby morning, hockey in the afternoon, and sometimes hockey on a Sunday as well. So I think myself and my other pals were the youth policy, because it wasn't much junior hockey or youngsters playing in the adult game at that point in time. So I guess we were the youth policy in Inverleith back in the sort of, I suppose, early 70s.
Now, we're going to get into the nitty gritty of the organisation around Scottish Hockey Heritage and what its purpose is in a separate section. This is a bit more about an introduction to yourself and where you're from, but you are heavily involved within Scottish Hockey Heritage. What is your role there? What is the organisation?
Yeah, I think we've evolved, I suppose, over since we started. But I think I'm picking up the role really of records. I think I've got a great interest in statistics and records. Cricket being one of my other sporting loves, so I think that's a sport, of course, ideal for statistics. So I kind of was taking my cricket statistic background into hockey. I started, I suppose, on Inverleith stuff, collecting it, because there was obviously a few bits and pieces from my dad was in the house, and Ernie Wall, who was a great hockey person, or Mr. Hockey as it were, for many decades with Scottish hockey, was also an Inverleith member, and he was a great collector of hockey memorabilia, and a lot of Inverleith stuff he kept, and he passed it on to me, knowing the connections. So my Inverleith memorabilia started way back, probably in the sort of 1980s, almost 1990s, and I kept collecting. But when I stopped playing, around about 2000, I kind of stopped collecting Inverleith stuff. But I think what then got me going again was the Inverleith Centenary came along in 2017, and I soon realised it was a great opportunity to gather up as much as I could. So that's kind of where I got. So I eventually started collecting all my Inverleith material, and inevitably these things take a lot longer than you think. You think you'll have it done in 6 months, but of course 3 years later down the line you're still trying to get pieces to people to give you stuff. But you get there in the end.
And how has this fed into what Scottish Hockey Heritage is now?
Yes, I think what kind of happened was, I think I got to the point of, I kind of wanted to document how Inverleith had done in the competitions. And so I started to do that. But I thought that it didn't quite give the full picture, because you would find out that they were 7th in League one year, and then they were maybe 5th, and then they were maybe relegated, and it all looked a bit of a dry subject. So I started then to thought, well, if I'm going to research all the Inverleith activities, I thought, well, I might as well gather up the rest. It was easier that way, and it would give me a far better picture. So I started doing that, not realising what lay ahead of me, that there was outdoor, there was indoor, there was men, there was women, there was juniors, schoolboys, etc. competitions out there. So that got me off running, and so I think about 5 years later, I'd eventually got to the point I'd eventually got it all down. So I then decided, having spent so long doing it, I would put it all in a book. So and that's what I did. So if I'm able to show this on camera, I did produce a book here. It's got all the...
What's it called?
It's basically just called the results of the national competitions for Scottish hockey, all the leagues and cups. Excuse me. All the winners are there. All the league tables are there.
Where can people find it?
So people have it. So people have copies. I've put Scottish Hockey have a copy. The National Library of Scotland has a copy, and a few, I think, hockey contacts have copies. But I'm very willing to spread it around to other people. So if people would like a copy, then do get in touch with us through the Hockey Heritage website, and I'm very happy to get a copy to them.
What is the Scottish Hockey Heritage website?
I thought you were asking that one. ScottishHockeyHeritage.org with hyphens in between the names. So we just recently launched that at the end of last year. So it's early beginnings, but we're on the way.
When was... Well, I want to get into a bit of the history of hockey in Scotland. When was hockey first played in Scotland?
I suppose the origins are slightly grey, as it were, when you look around, but certainly the first men's match was 1891. It was Veitch against Loretto. Probably influenced by the schoolmasters, probably someone from England at the time, who had obviously been exposed to hockey in England a little bit earlier, and that match happened. But we certainly know that there were some clubs around in the late 1890s. Some mixed clubs. They just generally played fixtures against each other as and when. On the women's side, it's a wee bit unclear who the first clubs were, but we do know some of the clubs that were formed around that period, and again, some of them just obviously coming out of mixed clubs and stuff.
And you talk about men's and women's hockey here. There were two separate national governing bodies, wasn't there?
Yes, there was obviously the Scottish Women's Hockey Association, which was the first one to get self-formed as the national body. That was formed in 1900, and the Scottish Hockey Association, for the main, that was 1901 before they got formed. They were, again, just a few clubs underneath that structure. Unfortunately, on the women's side, the earlier records, I think, at the moment, that don't exist at the moment, or have been lost. So we're not quite sure who some of the earlier clubs were, but we have evidence to suggest that some of the earlier ones on the women's side were Edinburgh ladies, who formed in 1898, and they were a very strong Edinburgh Scottish club, but they latterly emerged with Grange ladies, and are now there as Grange Edinburgh ladies. Also aware of a women's team in Hoyk, I think back about 1899. On the men's side, Glasgow Western were formed in, I think it was 1898, obviously still on the go. Clydesdale were 1902, I think they were. They were originally Cartha, but they became Clydesdale later on. We're aware of Aberdeen Hockey Club getting formed in about 1900. And the universities, all the universities had hockey sides back in the earlier days. And then gradually hockey evolved. Again, there was a few clubs, and some of the earlier ones didn't reappear after the World War One, and a new one sprung up, obviously, after the restarting of hockey after that period. What
were the first domestic competitions, like cups and leagues and so forth?
It's Well, both the unions didn't really like competitive.
The amateur ideals.
No, yes, very much. It was like, let's have a good game, but don't have a competition behind it. So league hockey kind of stuck. Started really in the 1950s. Various districts started up competitions. The north, the east, the west. They were all in the early 50s or leading to the 60s. The women were a bit behind that. I do know the East District for women didn't start till about 1970, so they were quite a bit behind, and that was the same in Glasgow. But that was where it generally started. There was Scottish Cup started for men in about early, I think it was 1962. I think they started. That was the first, I suppose, national competition for men. And then eventually, I suppose as the game progresses, we developed national leagues in the 1970s. And it became what's there today.
In terms of international hockey, when were the first Scotland internationals played?
The women got their first. They played their first game in 1901 against Ireland in Dublin. And the men followed suit a year later when they also played Ireland, this time in Belfast.
A bit closer.
But both games were lost the first time out. But and then from there on, the game developed obviously against the other home countries, England, Wales, and then there was what was called an unofficial home countries championship for both the men and women. I think the papers recognised it as a championship, but there wasn't an official championship for the home countries until many years later.
I believe the 1908 Olympics, first time hockey was involved, it was predominantly a GB turnout for this event with a couple of touring teams, but it was GB England, GB Ireland, GB Wales, GB Scotland.
Yes, it was. It was a four home country. I think it was France, from memory. I think France and Germany also put sides in. But yes, so you'll find that the Scotland played the Olympics in 1908, and straight away we've got 11 people who obviously became Olympians in 1908 for Scotland. So it's a good one. It's a good fact to throw out there, because you never think of that ever happening. But it just shows you that what's out there in the history of the game.
Alan, thank you so much.
Thank you.
That has been the first segment. Stay tuned for more sections about Scottish hockey heritage. Tao MacLeod, producer of the Half Court Press podcast, has published a book via Amazon. A Little Book About Hockey is now available from the Amazon website.